Thanks so much for watching, listening. We're continuing our series on Be Strong and Courageous. Hello, you need to subscribe. Why would you not? I have no idea why you wouldn't subscribe to this channel. Such great content, and the jokes, oh my gosh, right? They're just over the moon exciting. Oh, and here's an example. Which is faster, hot or cold? Hot, because you can catch a cold. Ha, so stupid. I know. So we start with a super stupid joke because then the content is so much better than the joke, right? Seriously. So we're going to continue this series and be strong and courageous. We're talking about Joshua and as the successor to Moses going through a transition time. And again, we talked about this. Moses, was very good at leading the Israelites through the wilderness for 40 years. And he had high respect from the Israelites, understandably so. Joshua, once Moses dies, talks about in the first couple verses of Joshua chapter 1, Joshua steps in for leadership. And I love that God says to him, be strong and courageous. And God says it to him several times in that first chapter and then also later on in the book as well. Be strong and courageous. Because the idea is, why would God tell Joshua to be strong and courageous? Because it's likely that Joshua was weak and fearful. And I bring that to your attention because I think you and I, from time to time, we are weak and fearful. And if we're not honest about it, then how can we ever receive God's encouragement from that? Comment right there. Comment on how God has encouraged you. Super helpful. And last week we talked about encouragement from different sources, unexpected, like Rahab the prostitute, where that's out of left field. But this week I want to talk about transition as process. Because in Joshua chapter 3, it's interesting what happens here. Because you've got Israel, and I want to walk you through this for just a quick second. You've got Israel who came out of Egypt, for a couple of centuries of slavery, and they go through the 10 plagues, they get released, they go through the Red Sea, Pharaoh and his army gets drowned in the Red Sea. So the Israelites see all of this. They come to Sinai, they don't have any food, so then they get manna on the daily distribution, 6 days a week. They come to Sinai. Moses goes up on the mountain. He's in the cloud for 40 days and 40 nights. Aaron makes the golden calf because they're like, where did the Moses dude go? Moses comes down, 10 commandments, breaks them. He's mad at, Israel for doing idolatry. And Israel winds up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. So that's the progression of up to this point. We see now Joshua enters the picture. And Joshua's done this 40-year gig with the Israelites, but his assignment is to take them from the wilderness to possess the promised land. And this is promised land that's been promised for literally centuries, if not, it wasn't a millennia at this point, but for a long time. So they're doing a transition. They're making a change. They're changing from wandering of maintenance, just kind of hanging out there and keeping the wheels on the bus. They're changing from that to moving into military engagement. And they don't have there's not like an army training school. You don't have, like the Naval Academy at Annapolis, is, West Point, but they don't have any of that. This is way back in the day. And so Joshua's responsibility is to move them from wandering in the wilderness to military conquests. And the transition point for that movement happens first in Joshua's heart. And in Joshua's heart, I think that's exactly why God told him, be strong and courageous. Because if Joshua didn't have that strength and courage in his heart from God, then there's no way on the planet he's going to move over 1 million people in that massive amount of transition. It's a process, though. So I think that God speaks to Joshua in his heart. And I want to encourage you like that right now, because God wants to encourage you in your heart. Be strong and courageous. It's not just God said it to Joshua thousands of years ago. He's saying that to you and to me today. Be strong and courageous, but also appreciate there's a process in this. So in Joshua chapter 3, this is the process. And I think it's interesting because God speaks and encourages Joshua, but now Joshua has to move from what's in his heart and also now move the people. Because in Joshua chapter 3, this is where he speaks to the Israelites And he tells them, hey, we're moving away from the wilderness. We're going to cross the Jordan River. And the Jordan River at this time was at flood stage. And then we're going to move into the promised land. So he's literally moving. And it's a big ordeal to move 1 million people across a flooded Jordan River. And sometimes when you have, in transitions, you have obstacles and hardships and uncertainties in front of you. How is that going to happen? What are you going to do? How are you going to overcome? And if you're like a detail person and a plan person, you want to know, hey, this is where we're going, and this is step A, B, C, and you do the sequence and process and planning and structuring and all that stuff. And Joshua didn't necessarily have all that locked in solid from God, but he definitely had strength and courage from God in his heart. And so here's a question for you to think about. Comment. How is God working with you for transition? How is God bringing you through uncertainty to a promised land? Because again, the key mental attitude, the heart core has to be strong and courageous. So thanks for watching, listening, and of course we'll catch up next week. Make sure you share this with your friends because everybody needs to have encouragement, strength, and courage from God.